All right, so we've got a big one today, a deep dive that you guys have been requesting for a while now. We're cracking open everything we can find on Indo Tech Transformers Ltd. Got the financial reports, background info, really the whole nine yards. Should give us a pretty clear picture of this company and how they fit into well, the whole world of Transformers.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty fascinating time for a company like Indotech. They're right in the middle of a lot of changes, especially with India really stepping up its manufacturing game, and of course the whole global push for cleaner energy sources.
Right, so for anyone who might not know,
Yeah.
Indo Tech Transformers, pretty straightforward name, they make transformers.
The unsung heroes of the electrical grid, you could say.
Exactly. Those big green boxes you always see humming away near power lines. They make sure the electricity gets where it needs to go and that it's safe.
Yeah, exactly. And Indotech, they're not just doing the standard stuff either. They've got a whole line of mobile substations too.
Oh, right. I read about that. Those are pretty crucial when you need a temporary power source,
Right.
right? Like emergencies or maybe setting up in a remote area.
Exactly. Think construction sites, disaster relief, even big events that need a temporary power boost. So, yeah, they're definitely more specialized than your average transformer company.
Okay, so bit of a niche player, but in a market that's, as you said, going through some major shifts. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit. What's the story behind Indotech? How'd they get started?
Well, they've actually been around for a while, founded back in 1992. Their main manufacturing plant is down in Kanchipuram in Tamil Nadu.
Gotcha. And I know there have been some changes in ownership recently, right? Didn't another company take a controlling stake?
Yeah, that's right. Shirdi Sai Electricals Limited, they usually just go by SSEL. They came in and basically scooped up a majority share in Indotech.
Hmm. That's got to shake things up a bit. So what does that mean? SSEL is basically calling the shots now?
Well, yeah, pretty much. They own a whopping 75% of Indotech now, so it's a pretty big deal. And we've also got Prolec GE, they were involved before they're actually asking to change their status from promoter to public after selling off their shares. It's all part of this corporate reshuffling, I guess you could say.
Sounds like a game of corporate chess, almost. But what about the people actually running the show at Indotech day to day? Who are the key players?
Right. So the company's being led by Mr. Sridhar Gokal. He's the whole-time director. And then you've got Mr. Say Krishnan, CP. He's the chief financial officer. Oh, and there's a new director, Mr. Sudhir Venom. He came on board back in 2022.
Okay, so a mix of experience and some newer blood. Sounds like a solid team. But hold on, didn't they have a fire at their plant recently? I vaguely remember reading something about that.
Oh, yeah, you're right. There was a fire back in May 2024. Definitely caused some disruptions.
Oh man, that's never good. Any idea how bad the damage was?
Well, it definitely put a halt to operations for a bit. But thankfully, they were back up and running fairly quickly, May 24th, to be exact. And from what we've gathered, the financial impact was minimal. They had insurance, so that helped.
That's good to hear. A close call. But stepping back from that, what's the bigger picture for Indotech? Making transformers is a specialized field, but what's the market even like these days? Is there a lot of demand?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Globally, the transformer market is actually booming. We're talking like valued at over 68 billion US dollars in 2023, and projections show it just continuing to grow.
Wow, that's huge. What's driving all that growth?
Well, a lot of factors, really, but one of the biggest is the push for renewable energy globally, solar, wind, all that. To get all that power integrated into the existing grid, you need transformers.
Right, got to get that energy flowing.
Exactly. And not just any transformers will do. You need ones that are specifically designed to handle the unique challenges of renewables. So Indotech is in a good position to capitalize on that shift.
Makes sense. They've got the expertise, and they're in a rapidly developing market like India. So they're poised for some serious growth, potentially.
Potentially, yeah. But to really understand their prospects, we need to dig deeper, look at their financials, their strategies, and really get a sense of how they're positioning themselves in this evolving landscape.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What's the story with their revenue, their profitability, and, well, basically, how healthy is this company?
Well, let's break it down and find out.
All right, let's do it. So we've laid out the landscape, growing demand, shift to renewables, all that. But what about Indotech specifically?
Right.
How are they actually doing in all of this?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Time to look at the numbers, see if they're walking the walk.
Exactly. So let's start with the top line, revenue. We know the overall market's expanding, but is Indotech actually grabbing a bigger slice of that pie?
Oh, they definitely are. If you look at their revenue from operations, it tells a pretty clear story.
Okay, walk me through it. What are the numbers looking like?
All right, so in the fiscal year 2023-2024, they pulled in, let me see, 50,360.79.
Okay, and that's what, revenue from just their transformer sales, right?
Exactly, revenue from operations. Now, to give you a comparison, the year before that, 2022-2023, they were at 37,090.49.
So pretty significant jump year over year. That's encouraging.
Definitely a positive sign, but revenue's just one piece of the puzzle. We got to look at profitability too. Doesn't matter how much you bring in if you're not making any actual profit.
Right, got to see that bottom line. So are they profitable?
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a little more complicated than just a yes or no. We got to look at things like EBITDA margins and PAT growth to get the full picture.
Okay, now you're getting into the financial jargon. Break it down for me.
All right, so EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Kind of a mouthful, I know. But think of it like a company's operating profit. Gives you a sense of their core business, how efficiently they're running things.
Okay, so it's like a measure of how fit they are financially for their core operations.
Yeah, exactly. And then PAT, that's profit after tax, pretty straightforward, the money they're actually left with after all the deductions and whatnot.
All right, got it. So what's the story with Indotech's EBITDA and PAT? What do those numbers tell us?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest.
Mixed bag, meaning what exactly?
Well, they are profitable, yes, but there are some challenges that are kind of putting a damper on those margins.
Oh, okay, I'm curious now. What kind of challenges?
A couple of big ones, actually. First, you've got the volatility of raw material prices. Copper, steel, you name it, the prices are all over the place.
Right, so it makes it hard to predict their costs, I imagine.
Exactly, and that makes it tough to keep those profit margins consistent. The second challenge, and this is a big one for the whole industry, is overcapacity.
Overcapacity. Explain that one to me.
Imagine you've got, say, a small town with way too many bakeries. Everyone's trying to sell bread, but there aren't enough customers to go around.
So they start undercutting each other, prices go down, nobody makes as much money.
Exactly. That's overcapacity in a nutshell. Too much supply, not enough demand, leads to price wars and squeezed profits.
So even though there's growing demand overall, Indotech's stuck in this squeeze play, right?
Yep. Trying to balance profitability with staying competitive. Not an easy position to be in.
Definitely not. But they do have a good reputation, right? I mean, they're known for quality, reliability.
Oh, absolutely. That counts for a lot in this industry. It's not just about being the cheapest, it's about delivering a product you can trust.
Makes sense. Customers got to know they can rely on Indotech, especially with something as critical as power infrastructure.
Exactly. Okay, so moving on. Let's talk about their order book. This is actually a pretty bright spot for them.
Oh, I like the sound of that. So what's so special about their order book? Is it just me, or does that phrase sound a little intimidating?
Well, it's not that complicated, really. It's basically just a list of all the orders they have lined up, projects they're committed to delivering.
Right, like a backlog of work, basically.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And for Indotech, that backlog is looking pretty healthy. Not only is it a good size, meaning there's strong demand, but it's also well diversified.
Diversified, okay. Meaning they're not just relying on one big customer.
Exactly. They've got clients across different sectors, different industries, and that's important for spreading risk.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say.
Wise words. And here's another interesting thing. A good chunk of their order book is tied to those government initiatives we talked about earlier. The rooftop solar program, the green hydrogen mission, all that.
So those government programs are actually translating into real contracts, real business for Indotech.
Yep, absolutely. Which suggests they're well positioned to benefit from those trends we were discussing.
Okay, so order book, check. Strong demand, diverse client base, aligned with government initiatives. That's all good news. But what about the actual execution of those orders? How long does it take to deliver, and are there any potential bottlenecks?
Right, so we don't have specific timelines for each project, unfortunately.
Okay, so we're a little bit in the dark there.
Yeah, but we can look at industry trends to get a general idea.
Okay, so what's the typical turnaround time for a transformer project?
Well, transformer manufacturing is a pretty complex process. It's not like ordering a pizza. These things are custom built, often huge, and involve a lot of specialized components.
So we're talking months, maybe even years for some of these projects.
Yeah, that's probably a safe assumption. But without more specific info from Indotech, it's tough to say for sure.
All right, fair enough. So a bit of a blind spot there. But overall, the order book situation seems positive, even if the timelines are a bit vague.
Agreed. Plus, a strong order book is a good indicator of future growth, right? It means they're securing business for the long haul.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered revenue, profitability, and their order book. What's next?
Well, how about market share? You mentioned they're active in both domestic and export markets. Let's dive into that a bit.
Sounds good to me. So they've got this solid base in India, and now they're looking to expand their reach even further. Pretty ambitious.
Yeah, definitely not afraid to think big. But it makes sense, right? The global market is where the real growth potential is.
Absolutely. But there's another piece of this puzzle we haven't really talked about yet, innovation. The transformer industry, it's not exactly standing still, is it?
Nope, not at all. In fact, it's going through a pretty massive transformation right now. Smart transformers, that's the big thing everyone's talking about.
Smart transformers. Okay, I got to admit, that sounds kind of futuristic to me. What exactly are we talking about here?
So basically, imagine a transformer that's packed with sensors, communication capabilities, all hooked up to the grid. It's constantly monitoring everything, optimizing performance in real time.
Whoa, that's pretty wild. So it's like a transformer that can think for itself almost.
Well, not quite thinking, but definitely analyzing and adapting. It's all about making the grid smarter, more efficient, more reliable.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. But how does this smart transformer revolution, how does that affect a company like Indo Tech?
Well, it creates a huge opportunity. If Indo Tech can position themselves as a leader in smart transformers, that's a game changer.
Because they're not just selling a product anymore, they're selling a whole solution.
Exactly. They're not just providing a transformer, they're providing data, insights, all this valuable information that helps manage the grid more effectively. It's a whole different ballgame.
I bet. And this all ties into that whole digitalization trend we hear so much about, right? Everything's getting connected, data's king, all that.
Yep, exactly. Utility companies, grid operators, they're all scrambling to find ways to make the grid smarter, especially with all these renewable energy sources coming online. It's a huge challenge, and companies like Indotech, they could be the ones providing the solutions.
So are they actually doing that? Are they making these smart transformers already?
Well, from the info we have, it seems like they're exploring it, at least. They definitely have the potential. But to really make it happen, they need to commit some serious resources.
Right. Research and development, maybe even partnering up with some tech companies, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole new way of thinking, a whole new approach to the industry. They need to become more agile, more adaptable, really embrace this digital shift.
So they need to evolve, basically, not just be a manufacturing company, but become more of a tech innovator.
You got it. And that's not always easy, especially for a company that's been around for a while, has its established ways of doing things.
Right, inertia, all that.
Yeah.
But if they can pull it off, the payoff could be
Ugh,
huge.
no doubt about it. It's not just about riding the wave, it's about being the one creating the wave?
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Indotech's history, their financials, the challenges and opportunities they're facing, all that. What's the big takeaway, the thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
That's a good question. I think the overarching theme here is transformation. The whole industry is in flux, the energy landscape is changing, and Indotech is right in the middle of it all. How they navigate these changes, that's what's going to determine their future success.
Yeah, it's like they're a microcosm of the bigger shifts happening globally. The push for cleaner energy, the rise of digital tech, all of that.
Exactly. It's all interconnected. And that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating, right? It's not just about learning about one company. It's about understanding the bigger picture, the forces shaping our world.
Well said. So, as we wrap up this electrifying deep dive into Indo Tech Transformers Ltd, what's the final thought, the parting shot you want to leave our listeners with?
I'd say think about the ripple effects. These changes we've been talking about, they don't just affect Indotech, they affect all of us. The grid, energy prices, the future of how we power our lives, it's all connected.
It's a reminder that even something as seemingly niche as Transformers, it actually touches all our lives in some way.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it, right? There's always something more to discover, always another layer to peel back. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and stay curious.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.